there's been, I don't know if this is a new phase of war, meaning it seems that Russia appeasement is gone. Maybe. They seem to have gotten to, is it rain? It seems like they've gotten to the point where they unleashed, and it wasn't just last night. Last night, there was a withering attack on all across Ukraine, not just Kiev. Many of the images that are coming out are showing Kiev in flames, but it was in multiple regions of Kiev. The thing I want to point out, though, is that attack didn't just start last night. It has been going off day after day after day, where Russia has been decimating Ukrainian positions. And in Sumy, they're effectively moving on all fronts. And so part of the reason that you're seeing many of the terrorist attacks that are taking place is desperation. They realize that they've lost the capability of fighting on the battlefield proper. Yes, they may do some hits, like they were able to hit one of the strikers in Bryansk, I believe. But that's in comparison to, well, like 20 different strikes or something that Russia made. So it's like, okay, you got one, but they got in like 15. And these were devastating, hitting administrative centers, power plants, buildings that are used as factories. I mean, they were hitting place after place after place after place, with Ukraine having no capability of stopping them at all. It seems that the air defense is not there. Now, this brings up something that Marco Rubio said. If you remember in the Senate hearing, Marco Rubio, when asked about giving money and weapons to Kiev, Rubio pointed out that the thing that they need is air defense, which is something that the U.S. no longer has access to, meaning we don't have. And they've been trying to push Europe to effectively give them what they have. So when you're seeing these attacks that are coming in, blowing stuff up, with Kiev not seemingly to be able to respond, that's why. That's why, which is the exact reason why the terrorist campaign has effectively increased. And let's be very clear, this terrorist campaign of going after railroads, they went after another railroad, they derailed the train. Again, these are not military targets. These are not military targets. And look, when they hit the airfield, your humble host pointed out, that is fair game. That will have larger consequences in regards to the U.S. relationship with Russia. And for that matter, because after all, the satellite imagery and everything else, that was stuff that was a vulnerability that was allowed so each side can know what each side was doing. It's like both of us take our pants off. We just stand there, right? But if you kick me in the balls, I'm putting my pants back on. It's that. We can both be vulnerable as long as we have certain rules and accept the other's vulnerability. I won't put a missile in space if you don't put a missile in space. I won't put missiles this close to your place if you don't put missiles this close to my place. I will get rid of a series of missiles and a series of weaponry if you get rid of a series of weaponry. That's just called negotiations. Those are the deals. Countries make those deals because they don't necessarily want to invest a huge amount of money into that stuff. And that's a headache that they can take off the table. One catch. If I believe I have an advantage, I may not want to do that. Meaning, if I can get access to a gun and you can't, well, I may want a gun. If I can put a missile in space and you can't, I may want to put a missile in space. It's that. These deals are not made because people are nice, ethical, moral, kind. It's not that. It's that both sides recognize, okay, we both can do that. We both have that capability. So let's just not do that. Since we both know we have the capability. And where that goes, if we do that, leads to hell. So let's not do that. But if I can do it and you can't, I'm doing it. So I don't want you to have this thought that, okay, well, these guys are just, coming together for good. Nope, it's not that. Both sides understand that both have the most nukes on the planet. Both sides understand that if a nuclear attack happens, all hell breaks loose. And both sides, on some level, want to have some kind of okay, let's have clarity here. Let's not have any mistakes. No accidents. So I expose my hand, you expose your hand. But if I expose my hand and you give a band of terrorists information, hit me, I'm no longer exposing my hand, which is what Michael Maloof was pointing out yesterday. Yes, it's a military target. And yes, those planes were used to hit Ukraine. But if the United States gives that data and that information, And Russia knows the US gave that data. I don't care what Trump says. Trump doesn't matter in this case, meaning it doesn't matter that Trump called Putin. Doesn't matter one iota. Russia fully understands, even though they may say, we know the Brits were involved. They also know America was involved. They just want to keep Trump on somewhat of a positive footing that was less hostile than Joe Biden, even though they understand he's belligerent and they understand he was involved. And they probably even understand it's a shadow campaign against them. But they don't want to say it. Fair enough. The moment that you say something, you've brought it into the real world and you have to deal with the thing that you effectively said. Meaning, Russia understood that the United States had troops in Ukraine, mercenaries as they would call them. They understood it. Could they say it? And if they say it, what does it mean when they say it? If you pull it into reality, you have to deal with the reality that you've just created. And so it's far easier to act as if it's all the Brits, it's all the Brits, it's all the West. They can use these euphemisms when they know full well that the US was involved. It's fascinating. I want to show you some of the attacks last night because these were punishing. And to be very clear, this is not retribution. I just want to make it very clear. What happened last night has been happening for several days. This is not retribution. This is a new phase of war. We're done with appeasement. We're done. We're going to prosecute the war, thankfully. Now, the only quibble that I may have is, why weren't you doing this before? That's the only quibble I have. If you knew the SBU had that building there, why didn't you blow that thing up before? If you knew that Power Center was there before, why didn't you blow that thing up before? If you knew that that bridge was allowing troops, why didn't you blow that thing up before? Meaning, God, man, I'm sounding like Lindsey Graham. The difference is Lindsey Graham is always Lindsey Graham on any given day of the week. I am getting more hostile because I want this war to be over with. This appeasement strategy hasn't necessarily worked. And all things being equal, you have people who are effectively just murdering civilians to murder civilians. That is outlandish. And if you're Russia and you're accepting that, don't accept that. Yes, they're going to do it, but let them do it in the context of you prosecuting the war vigorously, even, dare I say, savagely. It's a war. You didn't ask for it. They pushed it. They pushed it. They pushed it. They agitated it. They were going to invade the Donbass and murder all of those people that had already killed 14,000 ethnic Russian Ukrainians. All of that stuff happened. They blew off the Minsk agreements 1 and 2. They blew off the Istanbul agreements. Your hands were tied. That's the way I look at it. When people come on and they do this anti-war stuff, God bless you. I accept that. But I have a hard time believing that if some rando on the streets threw a punch at them, that they would let themselves get hit by the punch if they could do anything about the fact that they were about to get punched. And countries' first responsibility, defending the sovereignty of the country. First responsibility. The military is the beating heart of the nation. And if you can't defend your nation, you don't have a country. So the moment that NATO pushes to the border of Russia and is now using Ukraine as a platform to invade Russia, which was the plan, you got to respond. Full stop. It wasn't even legal. They overthrew the government in a coup in order to even get that as a platform. So yes, from my point of view, you now have the armament, the arsenal, in order to prosecute the war vigorously. They're running out of manpower, prosecute the war. And finally, it seems that that is settled in to the Kremlin, because that's exactly what they've been doing for the last several days. This is some of the attacks that were taking place overnight. As I said, these things are terrifying. These things are withering. And you can look at it in two ways. There's a band of Nazis that have taken control of the Ukrainian government. That band of Nazis has driven this country to war to the tune of getting 700,000 people killed in a war that never needed to be fought, never needed to even be contemplated. And yet here we are. And they still have the levers of power. They still put political prisoners in prison. They still give rid of opposition media. It's a dictatorship. They are liberating the dictatorship. They're removing this band of lunatics and whack jobs that have taken over this country in the same way that you can say the Soviet Union liberated Nazi Germany. If that's the way, that is the way I look at it, frankly. That is the way I look at it. These are some of the attacks. I believe this was on Kiev proper. That's one strike. And you have to look, man, if you're living there, this is terrifying. This is terrifying. If you are sitting in the apartment building that took that picture, the sound, the heat, it may blow out your windows. You don't know if your place is next. Because what Kiev has been doing has been putting military personnel in places like hotels. That when they bomb that restaurant, okay, well, you're having a military meeting in a restaurant. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Let's keep going. Here's another one. This one is funny to me, and I'm why. This is a Patriot missile system. Now, understand the context. The Patriot missile system is supposed to knock down incoming missiles. Your dog catcher, whose job is to catch dogs. That is your role, that is your responsibility. All right. And it realizes it's in danger. It realizes it's in danger. And it gives one primal scream at the end of its life. I call this the fuck it option. Notice those what lights? It's firing off missiles. It's trying to save its life. It's trying to save its life. Billions of dollars just being fired. And it doesn't help. It doesn't help. It fires no more. It fires no more. We saw something like that happened earlier. Well, there's another one that bites the dust. Here is another attack that takes place. I'm going to show a few of these because I want to get across the gravity and the scale of what has been taking place over Ukraine. This is in, where's this? This is a, quote, motor repair plant. Lusk, Luskh. Here is what just happened. Oh, here we are. Okay.
Сука!
Death from above.
Ебанутый нахуй.
Just fire from the sky.
Пиздец, просто пиздец.
Fire from the sky. This is not a video game.
Сука.
I also want you to recall the previous interview that I had with Andre, where Andre pointed out they knew that this war was going to take place when the government was overthrown. They accepted all of this, that this was going to happen. It's just outrageous. Here's one at Kherson Administrative Building, the one that took place, I believe this was yesterday. Yep. You should see the before and after picture of that building. It's cut in half. It looks like the Pentagon on 9/11. It looks like literally split in half. And just to point out that this wasn't, oh God, I hate it when they do that. I hate it when they do that. This is not a goddamn video game. This is, I hate it when they put a soundtrack to people getting killed. I hate that. I hate that. 1,000 times I hate that. It's a war. It's a sacred act. Accept it as such. It's not, hey, this is awesome. This was a catastrophe that never needed to happen. Where you're adding in thumping music like it's some kind of disco and people getting killed. It's just sick. This is some of the assaults that were taking place on Ukrainian lines, which is my point. This seems to be a new phase of war. This does not seem to be just a flash in the pan. I could be wrong. Bam. Another thing with the drones, one of the most interesting things that I saw the other day was Chinese drone pilots training to use those drones. And the training for those things are so intricate. Like, They could come through a window, go through chairs, fly around a room, and then hit their target. So when you saw that pallet there, the level of control that they were effectively using in order to get into the military vehicle, to go around and wait to figure out, okay, yeah, right there, that's where we want to hit. That is a level of detail that is astonishing. It gives them a certain amount of control that you may not necessarily have with missiles, because missiles, they're going at such speeds that they are, at the point where they're about to hit their target, they're going to hit their target, or they're not going to hit their target. I want to show something else. One more, I guess you could say this is, and shout out to Lebebo for this. The man is, I guess it's a guy, it's awesome. So I've showed the one for Lusk. Okay, here's one that hit yesterday, and I got to be honest, I don't know if this is a weapons depot. I don't know what this is, but the scale of the explosion is. I think it was like a weapons depot. Apparently, Germany is going to have to give another delivery of weapons because those were blown up. Just outrageous. It's a catastrophe. It really is. Think for a moment of how much money is being spent, just torched on, Red Square, or for that matter, torched in Berlin, or torched in London, torched in DC. Armaments being bought and exploded. It's not like you buy a TV and you have that TV for 5 years. You're buying a bomb for, $500,000 and blowing that shit up. And then you need to buy another bomb to replace the bomb that you effectively blew up. Yes, you're going to get a new phase of war where technology is going to increase. And oftentimes in wars, technology increases. It expands because you're in a pressure cooker of being able or needing to better your opponent. And your opponent is in a pressure cooker needing to better you. And both of you are pushing and pushing. And so what war looked like, let's say in Iraq and Afghanistan, changes 20 years, 30 years later with the pace of technology as technology develops. Flying killer robots, that's what we're looking at. And not just flying killer robots, water boating robots, robotic dogs carrying bombs in the buildings. We're looking at robot wars up until the point where you can destroy and decimate the other person's robots, where you can now effectively get to the people. This was the most rational way for it to go. There was no other way it could go. Governments have a vested interest in protecting their population. Because of that, they also have a vested interest in protecting their soldiers. In order to protect your soldiers, you want something to fight that war on your behalf that is not your flesh and blood. If I am in if we're having a space fight, and I'm in a rocket ship, and you fire a missile at me, that missile can go at, 10 times 10G, 100G, 50G. It's just metal. My ship can only go but so fast before I'm plastered against that wall and die in that ship, meaning my ability to respond to that is lessened because I am in that vehicle. Okay, what if I'm not in that vehicle? Okay, then you have something that can go in ridiculous speeds because you're not in the vehicle. You don't have to worry about flesh and blood being pressed against a corner or something like that. I'm saying the drone warfare is rational. It makes sense. It was always going to go that way because governments have a vested interest in doing it. Now, the catch becomes, how do you defend against that? What does that look like? Because now that you've created a new mousetrap, what does the mouse do in order to avoid it? And at that point, it becomes, okay, now they've evaded my mousetrap. What do I do now to come up with a better mousetrap? It's that process, constantly evolving. And so many of these countries, especially when they got into this war, had no idea what this was going to look like. And all of this stuff is evolving in the moment. But missiles are missiles. Rockets are rockets. Tanks are tanks. And the drone is just another element to that battleground. It's astonishing. My very point is very basic. This seems to be an upping the tempo of war. And whether Russia's doing this because they're sick of appeasement, whether they accept appeasement hasn't worked, where they accept that, all right, you've been murdering civilians and you did this willfully. This wasn't, we are doing a missile strike and we accidentally, nope. You intentionally blew up a rail line that murdered civilians. And even though they may not say it, the fact that their nuclear triad was attacked, I would wager to you that that is factoring into this also. Zelensky fucked up. He fucked up. And unfortunately, and one last point on this before I go to another story. I may come across like a hard ass when I'm saying this, and the things that I've been saying recently being more brutal in my thoughts. But that's towards the regime. It's not towards the country. The overwhelming majority of the country voted Zelensky in as a peace candidate, meaning think about Trump coming out saying, hey, I'm going to end the war, I'm going to end the war, I'm going to end the war. And then he escalates the war. It's that. It wasn't like they voted him in with this idea of, yes, let's prosecute a war against the Russians. It wasn't that. It was, hey, let's not have that war. Let's not get into a fight. Let's stop all of this stuff now. Let's stop criminalizing the Russian language. Let's stop killing these people on ethnic Russian Ukrainians in the East. Let's stop doing that. Let's stop provoking the Russians. That's what they wanted, which is why they voted for him. And it made it very clear, at the very least, Andre did, considering he knew Zelensky. All of these people were around during the Maidan massacre, or the coup, if you want to say. The entire point was Zelensky gets in. I don't know what was in his mind, meaning whether he really did want that peace process or whether he was always a Manchurian candidate. Whatever that process was, at some point that flipped. And when that flipped, he took on his role as an actor, put in his janitor's uniform, and went begging around the world for money. And the Western governments were happy to give it to him because from their point of view, they provoked the war in the first place. We have CIA and we have MI6 and we are agitating against the Russians. We're killing ethnic Russian Ukrainians. We're provoking the Russians. We're trying to put NATO on the border of Ukraine. We're doing all of that stuff. We're blowing off the agreements that we signed. We overthrew that government, meaning all of those things are provocations with a population that is effectively captive to all of those machinations, even though the population doesn't want it. You have a band of lunatics and whack jobs, fascists, that have effectively taken over control of that government and has been pressed into the military itself, meaning all throughout the structure of the administrative state, you have a band of Nazis. Regardless of the number, they have control against the whims of the population. So when those bombs are hitting, that's not because the population wanted that. It's not like, Germany, Nazi Germany, where all of these guys were on board with Hitler. Austria was on board with Hitler. And when those bombs started dropping in Berlin, all of them were on board with Hitler up until the point where the bombs started hitting Berlin. At that point, it was like, oh my God, Hitler, the Führer. I'm saying this is not that. This is a country that is captive to these lunatics. There's a big difference, which makes this that much more of a catastrophe. It is easier for me to accept a Nazi regime getting decimated. That is far easier for me to accept. This is harder. So me sounding like a hard ass is because I want this war to be over with. Have no doubts. I find this to be an utter and complete disaster. A disaster that never needed to take place, that we provoked in the United States. And I told you I was shocked to shit as I watched this unfold, sitting there, perched at the edge of the world on my radio station, thinking to myself, there's no way this is going down like this. And yes way, it is going down like this. It's astonishing. It's astonishing. My hostility has everything to do with touching reality. And what I mean by touching reality, when you grow up in a loving family, a mom that loves you, a grandmother that loves you, a dad may not necessarily be there, but so what? You have people around you that care about you. You know they care about you. It is understood they care about you. They support you in your pursuits. When that's your life and you grow up like that, and they instill a certain value set in you, you come away thinking that the world on some level is like that. How could you not? Why would you not? If, people instill love and light in you, yeah, people can assholes, but all things being equal, there are limits to the level of assholeness that people can be. And then you peep your head out and you watch your government pay for a genocide. Okay, that's pretty mind-blowing, because I didn't think that the world would allow a genocide to take place. But apparently, the world considers a certain group of people completely disposable, just like they did the Jews in the Second World War. Here we are again. This time around, it's the Israelis and Zionists, a political institution, by the way. I want to make that very clear. It's not religious, it's political. That decided we have complete impunity to murder wholesale women and children, burn children alive in front of the world, and the world is not going to do anything about it. And my government gives 70 to 80% for them to do exactly that. What is your point of view when you see that? Right. Like, how do you not come away with the assessment? Anything is permitted. Everything is allowed. And not just everything is permitted, everything is allowed, especially if you have the power to do so, and you can push back against people who may be against you on that thing. What does it mean from, like, how do you view your government when it does that and supports that and pays for that and defends it in the United Nations Security Council, goes to the ICJ saying Israel has a complete right to starve 2 million people? That's pretty astonishing. You touch reality. You touch reality, that's all. This is what reality is. This is what's real. This is what it permits. What you were living in before was an illusion that was created by loving upbringing. What you're touching now is the real world. This is how way things work. Same thing with the Ukraine thing. War never needed to take place. It wasn't like the population wanted it, but we wanted it. And the fact that we wanted it was enough. And so you get hundreds of thousands, let's say 200,000, 150,000 Russians dead, 600,000, 700,000 Ukrainians dead, X number maimed, injured, wounded for the rest of their life. And what was it for? It was for our political interests, no more, no less. We didn't care about the population. I mean, hell, you can go to Brzezinski, Brezhnev, Brzezinski in Afghanistan. Again, we didn't care about the local populations, the public, the people. It didn't matter in that process in comparison to the geopolitical whims and our geopolitical interests. It's touching reality. It's not a negative. That's positive. It's real. But the fact that we allow it is the thing that is just